So today we are here. We've got a great guest. Jay Borschel joins us. Jay was a four-time high school state champion for Linn Mar High School in Marion, Iowa. A two-time All-American at the University of Iowa, including a national championship his senior year. Jay spent some time at Northwestern after that as an assistant coach. And we are very happy to have Jay join us tonight. So Jay, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to be on.
So first things first, unfortunately, we've all been kind of different, situation in life right now. What have you been up to during this COVID downtime?
Yeah, I've actually probably picked up work, just with kind of working in the medical industry, and with obviously that area being so hard hit. We got people out in the field, and a lot of people, a lot of situations to tend to. So I've actually been doing a lot of work. Haven't seen any slowdown on my end, but I guess in free time we've been baking bread and going on more walks and spending more time together as a family and reading books and trying to disconnect from some of the typical busy life stuff. So it's been actually kind of a blessing in some ways.
It actually, yeah, I'm with you. It actually has been kind of nice. I looked at our spring schedule with both my boys playing baseball and travel baseball and stuff like that. It's like, man, it was almost like a breath of fresh air in some ways. For sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask too, one thing you said. I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast the other day, and he was talking about all of his friends are baking bread now. What is it about baking bread? Is that a new trend going on?
I don't know. Have you ever baked bread before?
I haven't.
Like anything, it's awesome to, use something you made or eat something you made. And I don't know, it's just one of those, probably like 10 years from now, nobody would be doing anything for themselves anymore. It'd be one of those lost arts, but it's just like very fulfilling and tastes really good. Just knowing that came out of your kitchen, you made it. We don't get too crazy with it yet, but yeah, for some reason it's like there's a renaissance in bread making. It's not too hard either. It's not harder than you think it would be.
Very cool.
Just for liability reasons, Jay, I would tell anyone or advise anyone, don't eat anything that Rob makes and brings to work. All right, but he may not have them.
Fair warning.
So Jay, why don't you tell me a little bit about start in wrestling and how young were you when you started up?
Yeah, I got started into it in kindergarten. So 5-6 years old. So pretty young, but not that atypical for the state in this area. Just up at the local club at Linn Mar, Marion, Iowa.
Yeah.
Well, were there at that point? Were there any other clubs, or was it all sort of school-based clubs then?
Yeah, it was mostly school-based clubs. There, we went to another one, the Bad Boys Club, that was over at Jefferson. Not probably a couple years later. That was probably more like second, third, maybe a little bit of fourth grade. But really didn't get serious about the sport until about, I think, fifth grade, when I started up with Pablo. And around that time, that was I don't know, maybe there were, but that was the only club I knew of. And it seems like it was the kind of beginning in this area of that trend, which now that's all there is, right? Is kind of private clubs, or at least, where the elite kids are going.
I think Pablo, he had Nick Trezino, Matt McDonough. You were there. Who else was there wrestling with you guys?
Yeah, so early on it was, Kyle Anson, Mitch Mueller, TJ Seabolt, Dan LeClaire, Joey Slayton. I think Morningstar was there a little bit. So that was kind of the core group early on.
Big names.
Yeah, I mean, for for that time, like those were the studs. And
at least one of those names, I heard Kyle Anson, you wrestled in one of the finals, right? One of your high school.
Yep. No, semifinals.
What was it, semis? Okay. Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, that year there were four of those in that bracket were state champs the previous year.
Holy cow. That is a grind. That's impressive. Did you do much freestyle and Greco growing up?
Yep. I mean, shoot, every summer, probably from 6th, 7th grade, did that whole thing. I don't know. I was more of a kid who needed a little bit of a break in the summer months. So I would pretty much wrestle all winter, all spring, into the summer, do the regional tournaments, all the state tournaments, and then just never went to Fargo. I don't know. I always just needed a little bit of space, a little mental, little break, physical break. So
sure.
I don't know. There's probably, there's that debate all the time, especially like with the flow guys about Fargo, and obviously generally agree for those kids, the more elite you are, the more of that high level competition that probably need. But again, it's got to be strategic. It's got to be what the kid needs, and I, for whatever reason, just didn't do it, and I don't know, that seemed to excel in other areas at other tournaments which take care of business. So
yeah,
I didn't necessarily need it, I think.
Sure. Did you play any other sports growing up?
Yeah, I mean, like baseball as a kid, played football, like tackle football like that through middle school, and then obviously I was pretty tiny, so 103 as a freshman.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of sports for me other than wrestling at that point.
Okay. Who are some of the wrestlers that you followed growing up, or kind of maybe influence your wrestling style?
Yeah, that's a good question. I grew up in the 90s, and so there were so many great Hawkeyes around that time. And the ones that stick out, Ironside and the Williams brothers, those were guys that I really remember like following and looking up to. And I'd go to all the camps at the university, and then with Pablo, we used to be training in that room, and it was such they got the Eastern Iowa Club right now. I know for a little while they were practicing in the facility there, but it was so interesting back at that time where Pablo had, a handful of guys, maybe 10, maybe a dozen max. And maybe we were popping in there right after practices, and just right alongside all those guys during those times, those mid 90s, late 90s, almost like training alongside them. It felt so. It was obviously, that was pretty darn cool for a little guy. Then you see like the Brands and the Gable, those names, you run into them every now and then. It's like you saw a ghost. You didn't want to say anything.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Hey, you had mentioned, you started off as a little guy, as a 103 pounder, right? Then you went up to 125, then another huge jump to 152, and ended your senior year at like 171, right? I mean, that's one of the largest gaps that a four-timer has ever made, in being a four-time state champion. And what difficulties did that present to you with that large jump?
I would say probably early on, those first 2 years, the bigger difficulty was just making the weights. So I'd say I cut a fair amount of weight and never did it right, which that was, like, thinking back, way more of a challenge than like actually doing the wrestling or bumping up. I mean, I went from, I was probably 115 pounds, maybe even a few pounds more, maybe even up to like 118, maybe, cutting down to 103. They used to give the, I don't know if they still might, but they had the 2-pound allowance after Christmas. So it was really only making it a few times and then getting that bump. But then, you know, like the next year I was up to 140 pounds, like grew 6 inches over the summer, and that was a huge jump. And so then again, making that weight, I remember in the finals that 125 year, I jumped on the scale before going over to the auditorium that night. I was weighing over 140. So it was, I was definitely big enough for the weight. It wasn't like I was an undersized kid. And obviously now, like, would not recommend that at all. So I don't know. And then the next year, you know, the jump again from 125 to 52, it was, yeah, I didn't cut as much weight those last 2 years, really hardly any, which was a little bit nicer, but was still, you know, fair size, good size. Never any struggle.
So someone who's been at the lightest weight to the middle heavier weight, is there different style wrestling that you got to adapt, or did you just keep being aggressive and going after them?
Yeah, I mean, you can see that play out, especially in college, where the levels are different than high school. Like, everybody at that level is good. They're good enough to beat each other for the most part, and you can see the styles. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure it's all relative. Like, you know, the bigger guys, I always kind of joke, like, some of the bigger weights are probably a little bit easier to wrestle than the smaller weights, but just because of the technique and the pace at which they execute. But I don't know, is it? I mean, you also got to be stronger, and it's more defensive, and so it's just like a completely different skill set for the body type. I mean, you're not going to be able to wrestle the same way against a 197 pounder as you see those 41 pounders. Just some of the, like, noodle wrestling that goes on, and the scrambling. It's a different beast. So you have to kind of adapt to, yeah, the weight and the body types that you're wrestling. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I would say yes, but I necessarily, like, young, that didn't really ever factor. And it was just like, go out, scrap, wrestle, try to score points.
Yeah. So back to your freshman year as a 103 pounder, was there a tough, like, 112? Was it 112 was the next weight class up from
Yeah.
103, I think? Why'd you cut down? Like, do you remember that decision?
I mean, I think it was just, you know, there's an opportunity here. I mean, yeah, I could have wrestled 112 and I've been successful, but I think just that opportunity of, you know, that next weight up, I was probably not, you know, everybody's cutting down from 125 to get to 112. And so I'd certainly be a smaller kid. And the other thing is, like, I didn't hit puberty until that, it was like that summer going into sophomore year. So I was totally underdeveloped as far as that goes. So I've been wrestling some sophomores, juniors, and seniors that are, you know, darn near men at that point.
Yeah, I gotcha. That makes sense. Did you find yourself, did your enjoyment of the sport change your junior, senior year when you weren't cutting as much weight? Or what? I'm thinking about some of the kids these days that cut a ton of weight. Maybe they don't have to necessarily. Just curious about that.
Yeah, I think it's the enjoyment of the sport. I mean, I would say, like, the stress probably younger, just of, like, getting getting it done those first couple of years and having that target on your back. But like the last 2 years, I felt a lot more free and at ease just because I had that success. And I don't want to say it was like coming easy, but in some ways it's like once you make that name for yourself, it puts the fear in a lot of people's minds, and maybe they'll go to another weight, or maybe they'll do this or that to avoid you. So I think it's just, in some ways, you're still a huge target on your back. You're still going to get everybody's best, but you're in some ways proven, which kind of helps. As long as you're putting the work in, you should feel pretty confident.
Sure.
What year was Matt McDonough in comparison to you, Jay?
I was a senior. He was a freshman.
Okay. That would have been a good double hit for team. He would have been up the middle high weights. And did you guys have any other standouts on your team?
Oh gosh.
And how did your high school team do that? Do your junior year?
Let's see, I think my freshman year, we were third in both duels and the traditional tournament. We had a really solid team of seniors that year that had grown up through the system, and they weren't the best wrestlers, like wrestling skill wise, but they were tough, they were strong, they did all the right things in that system for 4 years. And I think that's just like a testament to what some programs can do.
Yeah.
Getting the kids in as they're young, building them up through the school system and middle school into high school, which it was okay. I think with Linn Mar, there's a lot of other things you can do outside of wrestling. They got a big basketball program. They're big 4A school, so football is obviously important. They're also a big band and fine arts school, and so there's just a lot of different options, and it's just not the same environment as one of those small town, blue collar, small Iowa towns where you got generations of brothers and neighbors that have wrestled, and that's what you do. That's all you know.
Yeah. Don Bosco is one that I know we're all thinking about. Yeah.
Not the same school.
Was Coach Stryker there when he would have been, right, when you were in high school?
Yeah. Yep.
So speaking of coaches, you've had a lot of good coaches, obviously. Who would you say was maybe your most influential coach, and why?
Yeah, I think definitely Lee Fullhart. Name you don't hear too much of, but he's back in Iowa and back in the sport, which is good to see. But I would say he was there at Virginia Tech that first year I was there as a volunteer. He's still training, trying to make world Olympic teams. And I think influential from the standpoint of I was young and I was impressionable, and he scared the hell out of me. Just from how intense and serious he took everything from with wrestling, obviously. The commitment to the training, the commitment to the personal life, and the body decisions that you make, and everything year round. It was like I'd never seen that before, and to see someone so serious, and also he's a big burly guy. He's got the beard. You hear stories about those kind of guys from back in the day, and it was it was scary in some ways. Not like I was feared him, but you know what I mean. So I think that left a lasting impression, and then just we were the same weight, being able to bond and train with him that entire year, and then into the summer actually moved out to the Colorado Springs for a little while in the interim between those two schools, and was living in his apartment with 3 other dudes on his floor. And so he certainly taught me a lot and learned a lot and was good to me.
So Jay, what people may not realize or remember is that before there was a mullet in Iowa, there was a man with a mullet. And Ford Dennis was known as the man living in his truck. I heard that you're a bit of a free spirit as far as that goes off the mat. I mean, does that help you, take that break or relax from the wrestling world? And have you always been that way?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we all have to, how do I phrase this? Just kind of like craft our own niche, I think. And with wrestling, it's a little easier because you're just by default a little odd and different. So it kind of goes hand in hand. But for me, I always tried to be a little bit different than the pack. And I think that sort of helped my mindset for sure. Just like stay sane. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it was a coping mechanism or something with how tough this sport can be. But at the same time, I think it allowed me a space away from the sport, whether that's Dennis. I mean, we spent a lot of time rock climbing, and I'd go to music concerts and just, typical kid stuff that age. But I thought it was always important for me just because I needed that little bit of a break. If I got too focused in on it, you are already as it is, and I'm sure a lot of people say the same thing, but I just remember a lot of nights of laying in bed and not being able to sleep and just run. It's like running through your head constantly. Just mat situations, like upcoming matches, just thinking and not being able to let it go. And, you got to have, I think it's important to have a little bit of a separation just so you can calm the nerves and recharge, refresh the batteries. And it doesn't have to be like I drop out of the sport for 2 months. I don't get on the mat, or I don't think about it for 3 weeks. But it could be as simple as an hour a weekend, something like that.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
So you're also a pretty active hiker, or at least you were back in the day. I read an article or story about you had an encounter with a bear once.
I think I had an encounter with a bear. Yeah, I was walking, and let's see here. I don't know. It's a long story, but it was not the smartest thing. I decided to pack up and leave and climb over this mountain ridge and back to my car. And it was night, and I'm trekking through the woods, just a headlamp, and get to the road. So I drop my pack and just walk along the side of the road. And of course it had my, I don't know if it had done any good, but had the knife on the pack, and was going to get to the car and drive back up and get it. And up on the side of the road in the tree line, in my headlamp, are these 2 just huge green fluorescent, what they look like lights, but just like reflectors. They like green fluorescent reflectors. And I knew it wasn't like they have the pole with the reflectors on it, keep people on the road at night, because those went up and down. And these were like this big, and they followed me as I walked by them. So I can't imagine it being anything but a big old bear. But so yeah, that probably, I don't know, that's a good spook. So no more hiking.
Not at night, anyway.
Not at night, yeah. Probably not alone.
That's a great story. Yeah, go hiking with someone like Rob or I. especially if there's bears in the area, because
Just
first
so I
of
can
all,
run faster.
Yeah. You don't have
that's it.
to
And we're
outrun
a full course meal as well. So 2 benefits.
Yep. Jay, can you tell us about the first time that Tom Brands came to your house for a visit?
I know you guys were texting me about this earlier. I was trying to remember it, but I think I put on, I don't know why I did this. It probably just, again, being a little bit goofy, but had a bright pink shirt and a baby blue blazer and some funny looking slacks on. So
Styling.
What was his reaction?
he stayed though.
Was
He stayed, so he must have liked it.
That's funny.
All right, we'll leave that behind now. But how was your transition from being, 4-time state high school champion and going into college? And not only that, I mean, Virginia Tech, that's a bit of a road trip from Cedar Rapids, Iowa area.
Yeah. For me, it was pretty easy. I was ready to get out of the house and was pretty just independent in my mindset. So I didn't need a whole lot of like hand holding and things like that obviously I need a lot of reminders and feedback and stuff like that. But it was pretty easy for me, fit right in. It was actually nice to be away and to go somewhere a little bit new and unknown. So that was good. As far as the wrestling, that's a whole different ball game. Most high schools, you're not going to be getting near the type of competition every day like you are in college. So that's an adjustment period, and you got guys that are backups in some instances that are giving you their best, and so that's a thing you got to get over right away, is just the competition every day. I'm sure you probably hear that from a lot of people, but there's going to be ups and downs, and it's not about necessarily like winning every day. I'm sure it is. You got to compete, you got to contend for every position and point. That's the only way you're really going to get better. But it's like the learning experience that you get out of that. And if you just leave it on the mat and you walk away and you don't think about it, or you don't reflect, you're probably not going to get a whole lot better.
When Tom Brands was first recruiting you, was he did we know he was going to Virginia Tech at that point yet, or no?
I think I got my first letter was from Wes Hand, who was out there for a couple of years before Brands came out.
Yeah.
I got that letter in the spring maybe of my junior year, and then Tom got that job in the fall of the senior year. I was obviously out there on campus on the visit.
Yeah. Was it I'm sure you grew up, well, I don't know this for a fact, but you spent a lot of time at Carver Hawkeye, obviously. Was it a tough decision to follow Tom out there?
No, not really. No. I don't know, I just from a culture standpoint, I obviously grew up more with the kind of Brands and Gable mentality. Nothing against like Zaleski or what the program was doing there. It was like that. Obviously, everybody wants to wrestle under Gable or for Gable, and that was kind of like the next best thing.
Sure.
And that mentality, that philosophy, and I think too, just the fact that it was kind of a new program, new coach. They're gonna revitalize it, bring it back up to the top. That was obviously very enticing. And you get out there on campus, and you got guys like Metcalf and Slayton and Claire. Everybody was out they're trying to be a part of that. And that was exciting. We had Brands, Hand, Doug Schwab, Lee Fullhart. That's a pretty nice staff. So
yeah, I forgot that Doug Schwab was out there with you guys.
Oh yeah.
Jay, so you went out there to Virginia Tech, and I'm trying to get my years all lined up here. It was your freshman year. Did you redshirt that year?
Yeah.
Okay. And then Tom came back to Iowa City, and you guys came back with him, right? So
Yep.
you lost your freshman year of eligibility, then your redshirt freshman year. Is that correct?
Yep.
And same piece, kind of, going out to Virginia Tech. Was it just an easy decision? Just, I have to do this, coming back to Iowa City and wrestling under the Brands brothers?
I think that's all I knew at that age. And so that's all I knew. That's that's the only place to be. So there was obviously at that time so much buzz in the wrestling world. You had Iowa State, Ohio State, coaching vacancies, and a lot of buzz around all of those hires. And obviously, like, your entire staff picks up and goes, and the people that you went there for, and the people that you committed to, and all of that. It's not much of a choice. That's where you're headed. And then to being back home and close to home. I had my girlfriend at the time, not my wife. She was back there, so that made it even easier. And then just grew up, always wanted to be a Hawkeye, and so it really wasn't a decision. It was a foregone conclusion.
There's a group of you guys that left Virginia Tech back to Iowa City. Did you guys sit down together and say, hey, we're going to pull the trigger on this? Or, did you guys talk amongst yourselves as teammates, or did you just talk to the coaches?
No, we honestly, there was not a lot of discussion with the coaches. I think that they didn't need to say anything. As far as the athletes, I think for a lot of them, it was the ones that left. It was the same. We're going, so it's not really nothing that needed to be discussed.
Thinking back to your college career, is there a match that kind of stands out as maybe like the toughest or like most memorable match for you?
Oh gosh. There's a few. It's probably all the bad ones. So thanks for bringing it up.
It's always easier to remember the losses, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think there was some my junior year that I definitely still look back and regret. So just from we were talking earlier, the standpoint of once you kind of cement yourself as the target, as long as you're doing everything right, you should be feeling good and be confident. I wasn't doing everything right that year, and after coming off a third place finish, wasn't doing everything that I could have and should have, and it catches up to you.
Hey, Jay, another piece that I really pushed a lot of my wrestlers and, my family, my son, to do is, and people may not have recognized this, but you were a 3-time Big Ten academic All-American, 2-time NCAA All-American academically. And we're not talking easy classes. You're a bio major too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how hard was it to be that good in the classroom and that good in the wrestling room? And, just advice to other wrestlers, younger wrestlers, that you need that balance. You can't just be good in one piece, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody talks about just the need to do it in the classroom because for most people, there's not wrestling after college, and who knows, there might not ever be wrestling again. So,
Right.
let's hope not. But yeah, I always saw it as like if you're going to be successful in one area, there's no reason that that success can't carry over and complement each other. So if you're working hard in the wrestling room, like the other reason that you're there is to work hard in the classroom. I don't know. I always just felt a sense of responsibility that if you're going to do something, just do it well. I don't know. It's important for a lot of reasons, and I think just like personally satisfying that I don't know, maybe it was a little bit easier than it did to some people too, which that's a thing. Not every person is going to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything like that. So I don't know, but I think the more that you can complement the success like that, it's going to carry over and make you better in lots of different areas.
Now, your mom was a music teacher in high school.
Mm-hmm.
Did you play an instrument?
I did not. I did not. It was always a struggle to get me to take piano lessons from her. I remember I kicked myself that I never took her up on it. I do know how to play the guitar, so I did teach myself how to do that later on. But
I did hear that you picked that up. So we'll have to have you pull that out one of these next visits.
Okay. Do the talent show.
I like Jay, how we talked a little bit about well-rounded. I think it's important for the younger, wrestlers and really everyone to realize. Eric Juergens said it in our. We had him on once, and he said something about you don't see a lot of people winning at one aspect of their life and not in others. Like for the most part, someone who has the kind of success that you have had and that Eric Juergens have had, and it's not a surprise that you're good at multiple things because you put the effort in at all aspects.
Yeah, you're going to have a lot of those attributes, like discipline and commitment and responsibility, accountability, work ethic, all those things. And so if you're there doing wrestling and you're there doing school, I find it hard to believe that people that have all those traits that are going to just blow off school.
Yeah,
it just, I don't know, doesn't make sense. They definitely do go along, and I saw it too, where in some areas it was also an escape from like the rigors of wrestling to like it felt good sometimes to like dive in deep into a textbook and study for 6 hours before a big test the next day. I was also an English minor, so took a lot of like writing and reading and like poetry classes. So that was also like another side that helped me kind of cultivate some sort of interest outside of the sport.
Sure. So after we mentioned this earlier, but after your time at Iowa, you went on and you did some coaching at Northwestern. Did you have a connection to Northwestern, or how'd you end up transitioning there?
No, I just got a Facebook message one night, and head coach was looking for an assistant, and that was that. And I was kind of thinking about, I was getting that itch. I was like 2 years out, and I basically quit the sport cold turkey, and and that was it. And then 2 years later, not being back in it really in any capacity, it started to miss it a little bit. So, and I never got to do that, like the teaching and the coaching and mentoring role. And it was good to be able to engage with that for a little while.
Hey Jay, what was the biggest obstacle you ever had to overcome as a wrestler? Part one to the question. Part two, how was that transitioning from being such a successful wrestler into coaching? How was that transition for you?
I really can't think of much that really at any point got in my way. I never dealt with a lot of injuries. I always seemed to have like some success. I would say like I didn't have a lot of success. Like I wasn't winning everything at those early ages. So never won a kid state title. And maybe that was an obstacle where, you got all these other guys that you're training with them, you're traveling around to these national tournaments with them, they're winning these big tournaments, and you're placing, but you didn't ever win anything big. And maybe it's more of a mental thing to get over than anything early on. But then your second part of the question, moving into coaching, the biggest transition, I don't know, I think it's hard. And I think it takes a lot of coaches, I don't know for sure, but just hypothesizing that I think it takes a lot of them to kind of mature and to see the sport outside of themselves. And it's very easy to apply the same like principles and theories of your mind and training to everybody, and just obviously knowing that everyone's wired different, everybody needs something different. It doesn't work that way. And I always joke that like every coach should be mandated to spend like a few years coaching little kids, so you can really learn the sport and really learn a lot of the theory behind it. But too, just to like you can't train a kid like you used to train in college. So probably learn a lot and get creative with how you teach and understand the fundamentals and basics. But I think that's probably the biggest thing, that you have to make that jump with like applying everything and how you talk to people, how you train them, how you motivate them. It can't be through your lens of what worked for you. Otherwise it's going to work for some, but and you'll probably have some success, but everybody is such an individual, and that's where like the great coaches probably find the most success.
What is the best advice you could think of to give to young wrestlers these days?
Where do you want to go with this?
It's not an easy one either. Don't take your time.
No, there's so many things. There's like an unlimited number of things. I would say I got a lot of issues probably with the youth wrestling like training that goes on out there. Probably think kids take it way too seriously, too early on. I don't think there's a wide enough focus on the fundamentals and the positional kind of basic theory of the sport. We focus way too much on technique too early. I think that kids probably compete too much too early. It's got to be right for their development, their mind. They got to be able to handle that, and they got to be able to take that competition and reflect on it. And so they got to be mature enough to do that. Otherwise, what's the point? What else? I think too, like breaking a little bit of the rules, as far as don't always listen to your coach. And maybe sometimes you might fail because of that, but like the failure, the early lessons are probably just as important. So, how many times do you hear a coach to a young kid say, don't reach back. But then how many times you see that, like at the college level? You see like some rules, sometimes they apply, but you got to know like when you can break the rules. So what was his name? The Ness brothers, right? You had the Gator Bacon. Like that guy didn't just reach behind; he went to his back.
Yeah.
That's probably a rule that you wouldn't normally break. But I think opening the mind to more areas. How can we be creative? And like that's how you see some of the wrestling that goes on out there. And how would you otherwise learn that? How would you otherwise learn to turn this way and to flop this way and grab this thing and then come up between the legs and do this? And how else would you figure that out other than breaking a few rules? And I'm sure that person probably got pinned a few times in practice and in some matches, but there's a lot of like that trial and error that kids should probably be doing as well.
I like that message a lot. What I've told my son, so he's gotten, I'm trying to remember what he's working on. He was working with Brody Grothis on it was just crab ride is all it was, but he wasn't very good at it yet. And he tried it. He tried it against a kid who was pretty good, and he ended up he ended up losing the match. He got reversed out of his crab ride, and afterwards I was like, hey buddy, I want you to try things, but maybe let's try them in the practice room a little bit first. Like maybe not against like, the better opponents that you're going to wrestle this year, but that's all right. It's a good way to learn for sure.
Yeah. I mean, practice is good, but I mean, still like to feel what that felt like in a match. And he, at that age probably was old enough to feel what that felt like and to feel the position where he lost it. And there's a lot of adjustments that can be made from that. And so even in match situations, a lot of times it's like there's still like not that much on the line.
True.
Yeah. In every match, but unless it's the state tournament or the districts or whatever, that there's something at stake. We'll try something.
Love it. Hey, Jay, we've entered that point of our interviews. I don't know if you've seen them before, where what we have is called OT, sudden death questions. It's basically a rapid fire, crazy big questions. We're going to hit you from all angles. All right.
All right.
So I'll take off the first one. Have you ever borrowed a plant from the NCAA tournament?
Didn't borrow it.
It was a nice gift to someone, though, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell us just a little bit about that story. That's another great Jay Borschel story.
I don't know. It was just one of those things that popped into my mind, and because we're all wired a little different, I said, that's a good idea. I'm going to take that plant. That's also my prize. This trophy is my prize, and that plant is my prize.
And he gave it away at your press conference later, right?
At the bank, yeah, the after party.
That's what.
Longest live go that you wrestled, and who was it against and where?
I think one of them longest go. I was wrestling Colby Covington actually in a summer workout in the old field house, and that probably it was over 45 minutes. I know it was one of those wrestle till your opponent quits practices.
Pretty brutal. A couple of guys who aren't going to quit probably.
Yeah. I also remember another long one. It was probably almost a half hour with Eric Ludke. It was a hand fighting go. It was just hand fighting for over a half hour. That was brutal.
Favorite wrestling movie?
Is there wrestling movies? That's, I don't know.
I know you read a lot of books. How about a favorite book?
One I'm almost done with now. I'll say it's pretty interesting. The Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance.
Favorite food, and then where should we go eat when we visit either Iowa City, Iowa, or Marion, Iowa?
Well, I don't know. I live in Iowa City now, so I don't know what Marion's all about. But let's see. What do we like here? I'd say of course I couldn't remember the name of it right now, but it's called Pullman's. Little diner there downtown. Got some good grub. Favorite food? I don't know. I'm kind of a like trash can of food, so I'll eat anything in large quantities as well. So
Favorite wrestling match of all time?
that's, I mean, come on, who has a favorite wrestling match? There's so many. I can't answer that. I don't know.
No problem.
Shoot.
How about one of your top 10? You don't have to say it's your favorite. One of your top 10.
Top 10. I don't know. I like the crazy matches. So whether it's like Randy Lewis's Olympic final where there's 100 points on the board, or you got the Terry Brands, Jesus Wilson Cuba match where he grabs his balls and the fans are throwing trash on the mat. I don't know. I like a lot of for a while there I was getting a lot of the international matches, ones from the past too, just with some of the greats. It's something I never really got into when I was wrestling, and so it was good to see like different technical approaches, whether it's all the different Russians and Iranians.
Yeah. So speaking of that, who would you say is the greatest U.S. Olympic wrestler?
That's hotly debated, isn't it?
That's a tough one. Yeah.
That is. I don't know. I honestly, like, it's probably got to be between Smith and Burroughs. I don't know how you settle that though.
Yeah.
I don't think it ever will be.
I don't know. I mean, Burroughs obviously, some of those brackets that he had to go through, but you know, too, at the same time with Smith, he had some pretty good competitors out there. But I think maybe what gives him the nod just is like inventiveness of his style and what he was able to do, transforming the sport in a lot of ways.
Sure.
But at the same time, you know, Jordan does a lot of that as well. So I don't know. Let someone else settle it. I want to stay out of it.
This is a tough one, and I don't know if you want to give it or not. I was just going to ask, Jay Simon and I have talked about this a couple times. Kyle Snyder or Jaden Cox, who wins that spot? We can't figure it out. We have no idea.
I don't know. Probably got to give it to Snyder until Cox beats him. Coming up a weight class.
Yeah.
Got to give it to the champ until he's taken out.
You got to be unseated. Yeah, that's fair. I like that.
So, vanilla or chocolate ice cream, Jay?
Vanilla.
Okay, part two of the question. Have you had the kids to Carver for a twist yet?
Not yet. No.
Oh.
It was all about, when I was growing up, it was all about the raspberry. So we go to Harvard, we're getting raspberry cones.
Between freestyle, folk style, and Greco, do you have a favorite style?
Yeah, I think as of late, I'd probably more prefer freestyle. I never really, I didn't get to do it. I think a little bit, but never probably as much as I, now thinking back, would have liked to. And then just, obviously America, so folk style centric, but just watching some of the international wrestling and being more of a fan of the sport since stopping competing. I really see the kind of like art of it. There's a lot more, I think, creativity and craftiness that can get applied.
All right, Jay, this next question, I debated on what the answer would be, but during this lockdown, have you sat down and watched The Tiger King yet?
I watched 2 episodes. Do you need to watch any more than that? I mean, it's maybe 3. Maybe I watched 3.
I'm impressed that you got that far in and then quit. I was hooked by then.
I think it was just, it was so much to take in and so crazy. But
it's pretty wild. I didn't know who he was, of course, at the time, but back when I was, it was probably about 14 years ago, I'm going to guess, maybe more. The Mississippi Valley Fair had a tiger exhibit, and I have a picture somewhere of me and my then girlfriend, now wife, and I am holding a baby tiger, and I'm feeding it with a bottle. And now I know
you fed the monster.
So exotic. Yeah, I can't believe it.
Jeez.
Find that picture. We'll be posting that on the website next week.
I'm wearing. I even remember I had a Loris, I think football, but possibly wrestling shirt. Definitely a Loris shirt on. Yeah.
Yeah, they may require us to have you take that off or to blur that out before we post that picture.
We can blur it out. You don't want me taking it off. We can blur it. Okay, how about a favorite vacation destination?
Oh, probably anywhere in nature with some trees. I like a more active vacation rather than laying around.
Just stay away from the bears.
Yeah, just no bears, no beaches, no sharks, none of that.
All right, we always wrap it up, Jay, with your favorite quote. So what do you have for quotes out there?
So one of the dads of one of the wrestlers at Northwestern, he shared this with me, and it's always, never heard it before and still never heard it from anyone but him. So give him the trademark on it. But he always said, inspect what you expect. And that's what he used with his son. And I always thought that was very succinct and powerful. Inspect what you expect.
Very good.
Excellent. Well, Jay, I want to thank you for your time today. That wraps it up for our interview. I really appreciate it, and hope a lot of our wrestling families have an opportunity to check this out.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate the fun discussion, and maybe we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Please share this podcast with your friends. Give us a like and a follow on Facebook and Twitter at QCA Wrestle. And keep an eye out for more QCA wrestling content coming soon.